All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me again for another episode of Maps Are Dead with Mike D. I'm Mike Dauphinee. Excited to have my friend Kyle Stowers. Kyle, where are you today?
I am in Milwaukee.
Kyle's in
Yeah.
Milwaukee. Kyle, Major League Baseball player, Florida Marlins. You had the All-Star break and had a
hmm
pretty good week. I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah.
it's
The
it's it's a
break.
pretty good
Break.
month. The break, right? The break that wasn't a break, but it's the best kind of week to not have a break, right? To
Oh
actually
my gosh. Yeah.
make the all-star team and kind of get to just be there and celebrate in the midst of that. And a lot of guys will tell me it's a really good time.
But yeah. It was such a welcomed lack of break. Especially for me. It being the first time. Something that was kind of always on my baseball bucket list, if you will, but something
Totally.
that you don't know if you will ever get the chance to experience. So it was
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, I've worked with players before, and I've worked with guys I know who've gone all the way and have championship rings, and they're like, "But I wish I'd been on an all-star team just once in my career." Like, that's a big deal. So,
Yeah.
congratulations to you,
Thank you.
Kyle. And did you get married in the last year as well? Have you? Are you
We're almost 2 years
two
ago.
years in?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I
So
first met you, you were engaged, and we
yeah.
bonded over a mutual love of Pacific Beach, California at the time,
Yeah. Yep.
San Diego, right? We have our
Yep,
San Diego connection.
100%. Yeah, no, I grew up East County, and then I keep slowly but surely moving up the coast, a little bit more north, but still in San Diego.
Kyle, when I put this podcast out and I was like, hey, you reached out and we were talking about doing this. And I said, this whole podcast, the point is that I'm just meeting so many people who are saying, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate my life when there is no roadmap. And that's the whole concept of maps are dead. And I thought there's few things that it's odd and that some people think they know what it is to play baseball, but they know how hard it is. But you have to navigate a whole collection of things all the time. I mean, it's a fascinating, right? I mean, that ball is coming at you at 100 miles an hour sometimes, but also the mental pressure of doing that, the public pressure, having to do media every night and having good nights and bad nights, ups and downs. And when I met you during spring training when you were at a different team. We met,
hmm
almost 3 years ago now
Yeah.
at a different time, right? And you were hoping for spots. Your world now is dramatically different than your world there. And so I thought this would be a fun conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I think what I remember, and I think I've said this to you before, when we did the Clifton Strengths Finder test. I've done some personality tests in college. I took some different, sports psych classes and whatnot, and they were always really cool to me. And so I was super interested. The way you were able to break it down, though, is I think what really set it apart because we had no prior history together. And you walked into the room, you started kind of breaking all of us down, and there's other teammates. And I think you went through a couple of the other guys first, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that's kind of how they are. And then you turned to me and you did mine, and I go, what the heck? Like we don't know each other yet. You're talking to me like yes, like this is how I would act in this scenario, and this is the type of things that I feel like I need. And so, got a lot of respect for you and what you do,
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
and just think it's such a cool thing that you're doing here with this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I grabbed your themes. I pulled them up. We've got restorative, communication, individualization, includer, achiever, and my serial killer scrawl on the board
Yeah.
back there. That still sounds like you, right? As we talked
Yeah,
about before. Uh,
100%.
And we'll kind of talk through these. But I mean, I think Kyle, part of the fun of this podcast is kind of hearing the stories and hearing how people navigate. And one thing I'll say a lot of times is we don't arrive, but we're in growth. And so we keep growing through spaces. But just to kind of go back, like, why baseball? I'm sure you
Yeah,
played other sports as a kid. When did you start playing baseball and realize, wow, this might be a thing?
yeah, I think, you can go way back to, when I was probably 3, 4 years old when I started playing. I started playing because my brothers did, and I just wanted to be like them, as my mom likes to tell it. She even thinks that the reason I'm left-handed is because I mirrored them. So,
Okay.
because I do most of life right-handed except sports. But and then you think about like middle school, high school, and kind of what I realized what I did it for then, and this is hindsight, but was yes because I was good at it, but also I really loved spending time with my friends, and it was like if you were to ask people from my travel ball teams. It was generally more about what we were doing after the game than it was about
That's so
the
good.
game itself. And then as I like get into high school and, probably I would say around my sophomore, junior year when I started to get recognized by colleges, some scouts, you start to think about, oh, like, this is something that I can keep on doing. I loved basketball, still love playing basketball, but don't get to do it anymore just because I don't want to get hurt. But I actually liked playing basketball a little bit more, but I wasn't as good at it. So there was a little bit of that, like, hey, what, you know, gives me the best chance to, I guess, keep on playing. And then it's just funny how that transforms into college. I got punched in the teeth a little bit. I had a really bad freshman year, was away from home for the first time. I went to a kindergarten through a K through 12 school, small Christian
Okay.
school, and I
So
loved it. And it was
you're in that one community for 12 years, for
for 13 years, same
13 years of your
same group
life.
of friends, and
Yeah.
and obviously I had my branches of travel ball and other stuff where I had other communities, but that was the core community. And so going away from home was a big challenge for me, and then I struggled in baseball for the first time in my life, and that was definitely a gut check. You know, Probably the first time, you know, I wasn't sure if I was, good enough to keep on playing. I remember even then I missed home so much that, like, I remember kind of thinking, I just want to go back home. I want to, I don't even want to know if I want to be here. And I'm at
Yeah.
Stanford University, a prestigious
Yeah.
school, a place I ended up falling in love with. But, at that time, I'm just like, I just want to take the easy way out and go home. I didn't realize that, was fundamentally not the right mindset. But I remember my dad kind of echoing, like, I remember thinking, I mean, obviously the sacrifices, like, he helped, I was on scholarship, but he helped cover the rest of my college. And then he'd always just kind of say, like, it's just going to be okay. And I used to hate that. And if I wanted some more coddling, I'd probably call mom and she'd say, like,
Right.
mothers and their support for their kids and how
Totally.
they're just willing to just,
Yep.
hop on the bandwagon with them.
Yeah.
And so, but to have both of them was so great. But I remember him saying, like, it's just going to be okay. And I didn't like that at the time, but that was something that was like, kind of, I guess reaffirmed what's in your gut to just keep going.
When
And
you're when you're
yeah.
in that, he's telling you it's going to be okay. Like, then that to kind of, I want to dive into that first year of school. When you think about, I'm struggling with baseball. It's interesting. It wasn't that baseball changed, right?
Mhm.
You're doing the same thing, and it wasn't that. Would you say, in my mind, I'm going, I doubt that you were not up to par. You could probably hit the ball, but but is it aware? Because as I'm looking through your themes, I'm going, communication is about being understood. Individualization is about knowing how you fit included. Individualization is about knowing what unique thing you bring to the team. And you're suddenly in a world that you had not in for 13 years, and none of that's there. How much was the environment critical to you feeling competent in an execution task?
Yeah, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because I think you're 100% right. If I had to, kind of highlight a moment where I really felt like Stanford became a place I loved, kind of like home, was our sophomore year. We got a new coaching staff, and our head coach David Esker had every single guy on the team during the winter and maybe in the fall too, but basically just imagine kind of right before leading up to the season. On practice days, you'd have one guy address the whole team, one or two guys, and they would basically get to tell, like, whatever they wanted, their
Story.
life story, if they wanted to talk about, yeah, anything, how they got here, whatever. And I remember I got to talk about my buddy Jason Lyon, who passed away with brain cancer my senior year of high school, one of my best friends. And that was also what made leaving that community so hard, right? We had a group that really bonded together, through that type of just situation. And I got to tell that story, and I got to tell how that story affected my life, and the way I was vulnerable, so that was, like, really good for teammates to hear that, but the way people reacted to that, I feel like that's when I started to not just, like, have my close group of friends that I started making over the year, which takes time, which is part of, any transition, is, like, those friendships. I mean, right, 13 years with the same group, you're not gonna get that type of depth of a relationship within 1 year. And the way people responded to it after, I just felt like people understood me. And I'm sure that kind of gets at it, like, the communication, and I just felt heard. And things didn't get perfect after that, but, like, I think that's when, like, I started to go, like, I feel really comfortable here.
That's key, because that's what stands out. Even again, part of us good conversation is to draw for people who are listening and watching, is that idea is I will watch people who won't recognize the human, relational, emotional part that goes with actual just hardcore execution. And so they'll try to fix the wrong thing. And so struggling in baseball, and they'll be like, okay, well, I better go spend more hours in the batting cage, or I better go do this, or I'm loading wrong, or I should do this, this, and this. And
Yeah.
it's actually that's what I love about Clifton Strengths is it helps kind of differentiate and point to, well, okay, these things obviously hitting the ball at that point or however you're performing is the struggle. But wait, what actually are the different elements what knobs should we think about? It's not this knob, it's this knob. It's not your problem solving of restorative. It's I don't have a place to be understood. I'm not yet clear. I don't know who I'm engaging with. And if I can start to cultivate that, doesn't solve every problem, but it gives you the basis to perform better.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still very real for me today, right? Like it's, to be honest, like, the same themes, if you want me to talk about like why this year has gone so well, like the same things took place. And like I
Yeah.
talk about the pivot point for me this year was not, you know, the walk off I hit on opening day or anything I did on the field. The pivot point for me is you go back to spring training, I'm hitting 100, still struggling, haven't had any success against major league competition. I feel like I'm
Yep.
striking out twice a game in spring training.
Spring training.
And I had a coach after one of the games go, "Are you panicking?" And I go, "No, I'm not panicking. I'm just frustrated." And then we had an off day the next day. He called me on the off day, and I'm just thinking, man, like I don't want to talk to a coach on an off day. And I answer, and I don't know him well because we had new coaching staff this year. And I call him. I go, "Hey, what's up, show?" And he goes, "Are you panicking?" Says ask the same question, and I go, I start moving, inching towards what he wants me to say, and I go, wouldn't use the word panicking, but maybe what you think I'm feeling is what I'm experiencing. And he goes, okay, well, he's like, you want to come in early tomorrow before the cage time so you can get some like just some individual time in there, and so you don't have to feel like you're rushed. And I go, sure, that sounds great. And then I walk into the cage that morning and I look at him, I go, I'm panicking because I have done so much good work in the cage and none of it has translated into the game. And he goes, great, we can work with that. Like he's like, if you can name it, you can tame it. And I actually had a 30-minute conversation with him and our other hitting coach, Pedro, where, Pedro shows me a swing from AAA and he goes, do that. He's like, that guy's really good. He goes, that's Bryce Harper type of stuff right there. And that moment was really cathartic for me because it changed the light in which I viewed what I did in AAA. I used to view what I did in AAA as
That's tough.
not good enough for the big leagues because I hadn't had any success in the big leagues. And what those two guys did is we didn't even really hit. We just talked for like 30 minutes. I got to share with them, some of my concerns about making the team, my concerns
Yep.
about why I haven't had any success in the major league level. And just the way that, them and really the entire coaching staff, the whole spring just invested into me was like, wow, like
Yeah.
this is different. And I felt really understood by them in that moment as well, because I feel like I could tell them, like rather than them just throwing drills at me, like you said, like, hey, you need to do this with your swing, do this. It's like, no, you understood a little bit about the person of me and then that it's more than just a player.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I look back as a pivot point.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I remember the day we met, and I've told you this before, I think, that I remember the day we met and I did my little thing in the afternoon, and you guys have gone on to do a variety of things, a number of you, not guys in that room that day. But I remember saying to the coaching staff that I was like, listen, and again, one of the things, so I'm part of a research project where we researched Olympic, professional, and collegiate Division 1A athletes. And we have a white paper, 1,600 results, Clifton Strengths tied into this. And one of the things that we find is that coaches are really high in achiever responsibility themes. Trust the process. Here's the actions you should take.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, athletes are not. In fact, restorative was one of the really interesting things, which you
Interesting.
have at number
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
which is actually problem solving, not just do what you're told. So coaches, one of the things they have to do is we have to coach coaches. And I remember saying, listen, coaches, your default will be to give Kyle steps, pointers, and say, do the following things and trust the process. One of you needs to shut up and listen to him. Was the actual feedback I gave. I said, listen, he actually has communication, which means he needs to feel understood. He won't know what he's trying to feel until he talks it out. He will figure things out by talking it out and then may actually get aligned with, yes, you're right. This is a mechanical issue. But the act of him explaining, I said, you guys need to figure out how to better listen and let him talk. Once he talks, he gets clear, then the achiever restorative part kicks in and he problem solves. And they're like, that's really good. But then how do you get out of your own way, right? If that's not your way of
Yeah.
doing it. So I think
Yeah.
the good news is you're stepping in, but do you see, but as I've called this out, and we've talked through some of that before, once or
Yeah. Yeah.
twice,
Yeah.
do you find that when you have tough spots, when you have things, are you more aware and intentional of, you know what? The problem to solve here is that I need a way to process this. Who can I process it with before I dive into fixing tactics? Have you gotten to that place where it's enough in your awareness that you're solving the right problem more?
100%. I think for me, when things aren't going well at the plate, so like for starters, I want to go back to something you said earlier, like how it's not just mechanics. I used to always say to people, and when I was in AAA, like if you're not hitting well, sometimes the first thing you should ask yourself is how are you sleeping? Like are you getting away off the field? Are you truly getting away from it? Because I think about the times where I'm watching the most film and like sometimes when I'm most invested is actually when things are going the worst because I never turn it off. And but yeah, so like now, like when I think about is like, okay, like I want to get to the field early, things aren't going well, and I want to do like a hitting session where I'm like trying things and talking through them, and but like that's like far enough from the game time to where I have time to process what we're doing, so I can separate that. It's almost like it makes it less personal. It's like if I do it earlier, it makes it less personal, so I have time to like, disassociate that with the actual performance of the game. Whereas if I did that closer to the game time, then like there's a blend, there's a blur there, like that's like not able to like separate. And so like, and I guess part of like getting there early is like if I can feel like I can get in the cage, not rush, and we can talk through each swing, talk through why we think what's going on, and so I think 100%, and I think I'm gratefully around a coaching staff that I think gets that with me, like,
Yeah.
and sometimes, sometimes it's not just like hitting a mechanic. It's sometimes like, hey, like, what's the root cause of like, and I know you're getting at this, I think before we were talking is like, you know, like you play things out, right? Like, and so it's like, okay, well, I want to hit well. Why do I want to hit well? Well, part of it's because my job and, competitive, all this stuff. And part of it's like, when you're a professional, it's, well, because I want to be able to provide for, right now my wife who
Yeah.
is pregnant. We're having
Family.
a baby soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and and then I want to be able to eventually, have the means to do things that I enjoy doing, travel,
Uh-huh.
golf,
Yeah.
whatever. But then there's like times like when you really get into it that it actually like turns into a little bit of an overreach. And what I mean by that is like when it starts to become like, oh, because I want good stats, or because when it turns into because I want to make all this money. And then like you start like turning it into like things that really actually aren't the motive behind it. And so like I've had conversations with coaches this year, and the All-Star game was one of them. It's like obviously this is something I want, but like right now I'm playing for the All-Star game, and that's not healthy. Like that's not
No.
me. That's not
Right.
me. And you
Right.
said something that to me earlier this year that was just so powerful and so simple is like, we think that we have to act or do things in a certain way so we can behave a certain way. And you're
Yeah.
like, hey, like you can go be that person. Like
Yeah.
who's it you want to go be?
Yeah.
And we talk,
The be do
yeah.
have. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's still one of my favorite things I think about all the time. And when I'm feeling stressed
Yeah.
during a game or nervous about that bad, I
Yeah.
go, like what we talked about, what we agreed upon was like, hey, why don't you just go be the guy who's in the box? And then you talk to me about like, what type of person you want to be after the game. I want to be a good husband. I don't want to be someone who's like, bringing stuff from, the field. And I don't need money, stats, performance to be that guy. And so I know I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I
No.
think I
No.
have become a lot better at identifying that, like, hey, if I'm in my healthiest spot as a person, the player probably has the best chance.
Yeah.
So,
And because what you're describing, because I think it's so key, what you're saying is this, we talk about, yeah, most people say, if I do the right thing, I'll have the results, I'll be happy. When we're working with clients, we want to reverse it and say, who do you want to, on a macro level and a micro level,
yeah,
who do I want to be when I get home? So what then must I do in order to have that result? And then the money, the opportunities are the fruit of the tree of the being. If you are an apple tree, the good news is you get fruit. People are like, well, I really want apple pie. Well, then that means you should really start by having really good apple trees. Like you should go backwards. And I've had other professional players where we would have to set, because you're staring, that's the big thing, Kyle. Like, it's one thing for me to do my job. I'm not standing alone in front of 40,000 people with my last moment's failure or success on a massive screen in
Yeah.
front of me, where I have to go, okay, by the way, Kyle, don't think about that. Think about how you want to be in a good mood when you pull into the driveway that night. I mean, that's a really nice thought, but I mean, like, what's it take to go, yeah, because you really do. You have to shut that out and think, okay, this is not 77 games a year, like
162, and then
160.
spring training is about 30,
Yeah,
playoffs if you make it, you know.
you're literally in a profession where you should fail about 3/4 of the time, and you're still considered some of the greatest in the sport. Like, so literally navigating failure in that space, knowing what it takes to do that, and knowing, we often say your Clifton strengths help you know what you bring to the table, but what you need. I think part of it is like you being able to say, what I loved from our first conversation was, hey, I need to talk this out and then I'll deal with mechanics. I'm not scared of mechanics. Let me
Yeah.
talk to you first,
Yeah.
mechanics separate. And understand that you're navigating impossible pieces, right? I think, because not everybody gets if you're not a baseball fan, you may not understand, like, because the way I understand it, you're in the minor leagues, you're playing the lower levels. It's not glamorous. You're playing you're kind of all over the place. And then finally, a lot of times, like, okay, and tonight's the night. Welcome to the big leagues. And they call you up. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
you literally go from hoping to getting, quote, a seat in the big show or whatever, there's all the
Yeah.
different movie
Yeah.
phrases, and you're there. That's a big transition. And there's nobody there to tell you really how to manage it. You have a
Yeah.
whole different team that night. It's a whole different setting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Taryn Vavra was, yeah, you remember
Yeah.
working with
I
him.
have, yeah.
Yeah, he's an advocate for someone being in that position to deal with the person who kind of fluctuates back and forth, as like a resource, almost as like a secondary coach or something. But yeah, I think you get at something that's a very real point. Like, it's the hardest thing. Gosh, man, what's equally as hard as the competition you face on a nightly basis in the big leagues is when you first get called up, is all the noise around getting called up. I mean, you're staying in, you have the part that's like sexy. You're staying in nicer hotels, you're traveling better, the food's better, but then you also have the part that is a double-edged sword. Is there's more tension on you. You make a mistake, it's going to be on MLB Network. You already have a little bit playing baseball of like people can Google what I do on a day, and they kind of put a snapshot in their mind of like, hey, did he have a good day or a bad day? And they can have an opinion on it by just looking at a couple numbers. They didn't watch the game. They don't know what the at-bats looked like, but they can develop an opinion about what the day looked like. And when you get to the big leagues, it just gets exaggerated because, more people have attention to it. There's more media access to it, all that stuff. And then you also have the sink or swim of like, hey, there's no other level. Like, when you're in the big leagues, it's not about, hey, let's develop this guy into, let's give him a ton of time. I mean, yes, in some cases you have that, but it's like, hey, we need to win tonight. And so it's like there's that, pressure, especially when I came with the Orioles, of like, that's when the winning started happening. It's like, hey, who's going to give us the best chance tonight? And then, as you said, the bigger stadiums, actually has become something for me that, the more noise, it becomes more white noise for me, which I actually find, peace and solace in. And then you also have the thing of like, hey, like I said, there's nowhere else to go. It's either here or down. And so you are so close. Like, yes, you've achieved your dream by getting there in some capacity, but
It's just
also
starting. You're just
living
beginning.
the dream is continuing to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then all of a sudden the pressure to stay there is, to me, a lot different than the desire to get there. And learning how to navigate that, I mean, something that in some capacity I'm still learning how to do, because there's just levels to it. And now I'm learning how to navigate a different level of attention, you know, um, and navigating how to learn how to go back home to San Diego and play in front of, hundreds of my friends and family, but yeah, it's just, it's something that you don't get taught to do. And it takes a lot of time to honestly learn how to re-simplify it, right? To like to get back to, okay, like, and I just go back to me for, it's like, okay, like,
That's the key, I think. The go
like,
back to me part. Like, how do you
yeah,
go back to you? How do you
yeah,
center back to your routine? And how do you center back to that core? Because I
yeah,
think that's my question, is that how do you do? Because even now, like, I know, like, you have a couple different things and you're out, like, things that instead of being resistant and trying to control variables outside yourself, going, look, I'm a talented guy who's doing something he loves, has a great opportunity. I'm going to anchor to that versus all the things I can't control. Like,
Yeah,
do you have tactics that you use to kind of get yourself centered?
yeah, I have probably a more rigorous routine. It's something that it's actually I spend more time, I feel like, mentally getting ready to play than I do physically on a day to day. And for me, it took a lot of trial and error, and I love trying new things. And I think that's what gets back to like when we talked about like the restorative part. I do love problem solving. Like I do love like I'm not scared to try a different drill. Again, like if we get back to like why are we doing this? And so for me, what I do every day, what I landed on, I mean, so every single day on the way to the field, I listen to worship music. And
Okay.
that for me is like,
Do you have a
worship
go-to
music.
band, by the way? Do you have a go-to flavor?
Brandon Lake is
Brandon
probably my
Lake's your go-to?
favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I have like a playlist I just shuffle
Okay.
through, and
Yep.
generally my song that I love is a song called Fear Not, and it starts with, one of the key lines is like, I won't be afraid. And because so much of what we do there's as athletes involves fear of failure, right? I mean, like when you talk about things that are inhibitive, it's, that fear of failure.
Yeah, we
So
call it
I
an
worship.
anti-vision. A vision is
uh,
something you don't want to have happen.
yes. And so um going through so worship music, prayer,
Yep.
I
Okay.
get to the field, and lately I've actually been reading for about 20 minutes. I'll do 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation, and then I'll head into the stadium and I'll get in the cold tub for 2 minutes right away. And that's something I don't want to do. It's uncomfortable every time, but I do it
It doesn't
because
get
that's
any
like,
easier. It doesn't, no
because
matter how
it
long times
doesn't.
you do it. No.
And I actually like I build it up too. Like I build it up and like, man, like I really don't want to do this because there's a little bit of that, like once I get over it, I feel that satisfaction of like, okay, like I can do something hard. Like I'm
So
ready for the challenge.
you let yourself not anticipate not wanting to do it, so the payoff feels greater.
Yes,
Nice.
exactly. And then I'll do, my contrast, but also I'll journal too. And journaling for me became a source of just like not allowing myself to ruminate. Maybe it's sometimes, setting a goal for the day. And what all this stuff allowed me to do was I feel like I've leaned more into the uncertainty of the day to day. Right. And, for me, for the longest of time, it was like, it felt like that the negative was inevitable. And so what I started to do was, okay, I started rather than like trying to visualize positive things, I actually started to kind of play out what's the worst case scenario?
So good. Yeah.
Like what is the worst case scenario? And I would go through it and, what's the worst case scenario today? And for me, it's generally like if I don't hit the ball once today, if I go every at bat and I strike out, that's my biggest fear every day. Okay, well, what's gonna happen? I go, well, I'm still gonna go back home. Like, right now, like I'm probably like still gonna be on the team. Like it's something that could happen. And then I started to go, you know what? If that happens, I'm gonna be okay. And I can live with that if that happens because I know I do everything. I mean, I know I maybe over prepare. And so what the over preparation at times would do was like I felt like I could like cling on to the results and like I could manipulate them with strings attached and I'm doing all these things. But it's like no, like there's still that uncertainty. And so it's like, okay, if I can accept that the worst thing that's happened, I go, well, what's something that good could happen today? I could hit a home run, I could draw a walk, get a couple hits, and I accept that too. You know what I mean? So what
Hmm.
that has allowed me to do is okay, my best case scenario, my worst case scenario, if either happen, I know that I'm going to be okay. And that's what my whole process has kind of allowed me to do. And then now it's just even more, it's like leaning into like, even if I feel bad or if I feel really good, more particularly when I feel bad though, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen today. I really don't. And so like, why would I try to like, even assume that something bad's going to happen? It's like, who knows what God wants me to go through today?
Yeah.
Who knows
Yeah.
what God wants me to learn today?
Yeah.
And so it's like when I'm not feeling good in the cage, now it's like, okay, well, you know, the failing has started the problem solving. And it's like, for me to act like there's an inevitability of result, good or bad, that can happen, I think is insulting to, just the, you know, to God, in my
You're
opinion,
making you're making
because yeah,
yourself a god. You're acting like you know everything in some ways.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
It's a fascinating, because I mean, but I'm hearing in you this idea of I don't need to be resistant to every problem. I don't have to manipulate the control, but finding a way to go, I'm going to anchor my peace, which is a client. I'll ask questions. A buddy of mine taught me how to, he's like, yeah, where do you anchor your peace? Well, you're anchoring your peace to like, look, I can be resilient because I know who I am. And so all the pre-work and everything is about going, let me prep and anchor myself, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, no hit or a home run or multiple home runs, I'm still going to be me, and I can know that. And that is simply things coming at me versus being resistant, because people will spend a lot of times waiting to catalog all the threats instead of going, look, I mean, I was thinking about this, Kyle, you're literally in a job where their job is to try and give you something you haven't thought of.
yeah,
I mean, literally, a pitcher is trying to catch you off guard. It's
yes, yeah,
You're actively being tested on your ability to handle the unknown every single time you're at bat. That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
And so
no,
the thought of
100%.
trying to control that, to find that anchor, it's amazing to find that, especially with the individualization part, to let the restorative be, let me solve the problem of anchoring myself
Yeah,
versus solve the
yes.
problem of the pitch.
Yeah, no, you said it. That's exactly what it is. And you play out these scenarios further, right? Again, play out the dream scenario. I make all the money I want to make. I get to do all the things I want to do after I'm playing, or have all the success. And then you play out the scenario where baseball doesn't go well and it ends after this year. And it goes, well, I still got like, it all leads back to the community and people that I love and spending time with them. And it's like, I can do that regardless if baseball goes well or not. Like I believe in what I stand for. I believe I treat people the right way. I have an amazing community around me. And when I go back to the spring, and I used to say to myself as this crutch that if I had the coaching staff that just really believed in me and would just trust me to play every day and blah, 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 like I'd be able to figure it out. And they were doing this in the spring, and I still wasn't playing well.
Yeah.
So I
It's not
go,
someone else's fault. It's me. It's
I go,
me. I'm the
that
common
was a,
denominator here.
I go, that was the crutch I always had. And I go, okay, well then what's the real issue? And I'm the only person, and still I battle this every day. I was the only person in my life who told myself that it would not be okay if I didn't have the success that I think I should have. And I go, my family's not telling me that. My wife's certainly not telling me that. Like all the people I love and care about, like they're certainly not, telling me that. I go, so why am I telling myself that? Like why can't I provide a space, myself that is like what I would give to a friend?
Yeah.
And when I
I think
did that, I
I
was like,
lost your camera. I lost your camera, Kyle. Is it still on for you? There it
yeah,
is. There you're back. Yeah, you're right.
okay,
Cool.
perfect.
You're good. You're good. But yeah, so who was telling? So how did you make that shift though? Like,
Yeah,
what finally cut through the noise on no one else is telling me this but me? Because that's a big move for people. A lot of people
yeah.
are believing stories that only they are telling themselves.
Yeah, totally. It stems back to last year. So my mentor, his name's Jason Jenkins. He tells a story about a bear, like yeah. Well, he tells a story. It starts like we're all chasing after this mountaintop of becoming the person that God designed us to be. And when you're on that journey and you've decided to take that journey and climb up that mountain, somewhere along that road, a bear is going to stop you. And when you face that bear, there's three things you can do. You can stay the same, stand right where you are, and basically get attacked. You can run away and, basically lose all the progress you've made, or you can fight. His, use of the bear is an analogy for what I would argue is Satan, or is, whatever people want to use. You want to use
So
intrusive
whatever
and
struggle, yeah, whatever struggle you're
intrusive
facing.
thought,
Yeah, sure.
intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
You get the point. And so,
Yep.
um,
Pick your obstacle.
is I want to fight that. I don't want to just give in to that and revert back. And so it's a daily sign up to fight that bear every single day. And it doesn't go away. The bear, you know, evolves, changes, attacks you in different forms. How I'm attacked in the off season is completely different than the way I'm attacked during the season. Season is generally, like I said, fear of failure, fear of why not be able to keep this up, the fear of the lie that like I have to perform well for people to care about me. And even as things go that way, it's a daily fight. And so when I accepted the fact that it's always going to be a fight, and like we talked to before, that you're actually not going to get to the destination, you know that like you're always going to be on that journey of, in my opinion, of fighting this bear, and then it's going to look different at different phases of your life. And so kind of getting back to your question, that was kind of what pivoted for me, was realizing that like I would argue that like I'm being attacked,
Yeah.
and so
When
that I have to fight back.
in that moment of that struggle, it's the I have to choose to fight. But it's interesting too is that like even the things, and again, whether it's how people define what their struggle ends up being or what their bear is, just for people that have individualization and communication and includer, part of the voices will be, gosh, what don't I know? That'll be communication. Individualization, what if I'm not unique enough anymore? What if I'm not special enough? Or if I don't do something with my achiever individualization that's special enough, they're not going to want me. And includer is like, you know what? Oh, these are the hot things now. I'm excluded. And so, what I love about Clifton Strengths for me is it gives me a flavor on the lives I choose to live. Is it not only, I mean, Galb will never say this, like it's about strengths, and it is, but it's patterns of way of thinking and feeling and behaving that I've now learned that I'm like, oh yeah, my flavor of self-poison is this. Oh, if only this would happen. Oh, if only, I'm like, yep. And so once I've now learned that, I'm like, because I have communication like you, but then I have activator or command or things like that. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm like, see, yeah, I recently had an airline ticket that went south on my way to Nigeria and it cost me like more than $3,000. Literally didn't get something from immigration. And I literally in the airport was beating myself up. If you were a better leader, Mike, you wouldn't have wasted this money. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
at the counter in Italy fighting myself. And I'm like, literally the voice of, you're a crappy leader. And everybody's going to know you're a crazy person. And so we have our own flavor. And so learning Clifton Strengths is just vocabulary, but you can then be better prepared of, oh, that's a lie. Wait, and so I don't say this very much, but I tell people, if you can get good at knowing what strengths you bring to the table and knowing what you need to bring those and knowing the lies you need to ignore, you
yeah,
can
yeah,
literally type them back to your top 5
yeah, totally, totally. And
fortunate
I
ways.
think you bring up a good point of awareness, right? It's like, because and it kinda goes back to what my coach said to me in spring, if you can name it, you can tame it. Like,
Sure.
you have to be aware, I guess, of what these themes are. And that takes, for me, it's, I always say like for guys that are going into like their first year of professional baseball or college,
Hmm.
and more regards to baseball, I say like pay attention. Pay attention to, different things that happen, try different things, see what works, because like you're going to play a lot of games, and eventually you're going to need to develop, I guess, like what you're saying is like you're going to develop patterns. And honestly, what you are going to, learn is that when this issue comes up, I know how to combat it. Like I know how to, you know, I know how to solve the problem. And the problems are going to keep coming, but the solutions are going to keep coming as well.
Yeah, it's true. And when you think about the hard, like our brain will often tell us that the problem is the thing that we understand the most. I'm not working hard enough with achiever. People are restorative. Oh, I'm going to miss something. You're like, no, you're not. Or communication, I'm not understood. Include, I'm going to be I'm going to be ostracized. Individualization, I'm not special enough. And so once we kind of know that, we can kind of step into that. In my last couple minutes here before I give you back on your one day off, and you've given me, you don't have a non-travel day very often. So this is gold, man. I want to give you back your time. But like when you think of, because there's 2 questions. One, people, we build up this thing we call arrival fallacy. This fallacy of
Yeah.
when I arrive here, I'll be different. I've had people say, well, when I overcome this, when this
Yes.
happens,
Yep.
and on some levels, especially professional athletes, celebrities, people who have won awards, we think that they've accomplished something. Somebody who's standing there talking back to us, like, what's your biggest learning for yourself when you're like, wait, I know it's like to dream of a thing and achieve a part of that. And here's the thing I've learned.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm figuring out.
I think the thing for me right now is that life, again, we'll use some of a similar analogy. Life is a series of mountaintops. And, so I've been reading a book called We Who Wrestle with God by Jordan Peterson. It's been a really challenging and just awesome read for me. But, life is a series of mountaintops. And when you climb up a mountain and achieve whatever your current point of aim is, right? And so, for me, for a little bit it was maybe the All-Star game, or early in the year it was honestly like it was making the team,
Yeah,
but
right.
like once you climb that mountain, you know, there's an inevitability of having to go back down, and that's, literally and figuratively, like, probably in some capacity, like when you have that like type of like achievement or whatever, there's like that dopamine increase, and then there's that little like,
Yeah.
like
It's
that
always the
decrease.
retract. Yep.
Exactly. And so, but then you realize that there's another mountain to go up to, and it's going to be equally to probably even more challenging than the last. And I think that's what life is all about is trying to do good, trying to make for me the biggest impact that I possibly can. But like what an awesome, opportunity that and experience of all these different mountaintops, you're learning and growing. And I think it's important to have things to aim, towards, but then, when if you're climbing Mount Everest, and I know you've done some very,
Yeah, Everest
exceptional
Base Camp,
journeys,
and yeah, yeah,
some very
Patagonia.
exceptional journeys. If you are too, I talked about this with our mental skills coach with the Marlins, Marius, that if you're too focused on the destination, sometimes it can distract you from, the short-term steps that you need to take. But it's good to have that mountaintop, that peak as a place to check back into from time to time, but it gets back to, okay, like what can I do right now that's in my control, and I think, fixating on, the next step is probably more important more often than always looking back to like where am I relative to my destination.
I found it gives accountability, because what you're describing, even to kind of pull back to even the vision of being thing, who you want to be every night in the ballpark. We will often, one of the things we'll do with clients, and I do, is like we do the obituary exercise, where I'm like,
Hmm.
write out your obituary, but from an idea of who do I want to be, not be, but then, so from a vision perspective and a big idea of I want to be fearless and I want to be, but then we pick things that you want to build in there, a cause worth your life, things you want to
Yeah.
overcome, people you want to serve. But the big idea is one of, we make those things a target, not because they're the point, because what you're still you when you get there.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that we say the targets you pick to achieve are the fruit of becoming,
Yeah.
which is why I say we need to pick targets of who we want to be that demand that we grow to become them,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
I,
you have to
I
become better.
Yep, and I think what I say this to my wife all the time, like, I actually don't feel like, like, the I mean, I think you should be doing in some capacity something that feels maybe a step past what you naturally are capable of doing, and that's what baseball has become for me and
Yes.
professionally. Is, man, like, again, you go back to K through 12, like I love home. Like, so I'm away from home most of the year, don't see my family, a ton, playing every single day, like, someone who originally, was, playing to hang out with friends, and I get to do that every day, obviously, with the guys, but like you just get all these things like baseball is, for me is like so grateful to be doing what I'm doing. I love it. I love the game. I love playing, but like it's the perfect challenge for me to grow, to struggle. Like I don't feel like, even when I'm doing well, I don't feel like it's easy. Like I don't feel like it's like as sexy as it looks maybe, but like it just is the perfect like challenge for me where it is solvable in some capacity. It forces me, rather than looking too far ahead, we play 162 games. You think about 100, I mean, even right now we have 61 games left. If I think about playing 61 games, I get exhausted. So what do? I got one game tomorrow, and I can, I believe that God promises us enough for each day. Like the next days have enough issues of them that they'll come. Like it forces me to get more present. It forces me to, it gives me the chance to problem solve, like things that I love to do. Gives me the chance to, make a bigger impact. You know, on my community, on, maybe the city of Miami, whatever I can do just to have a platform. And so like that's what it's become for me now is like it just feels like something that like it puts me outside of my comfort zone, and again, I love what I do. I'm grateful for what I do, but it's a big challenge and I love the challenge.
Because it's so great. I mean, and that's a great way to land us, because I think that's the question, is that I had someone say to me one time, everything you want is outside, right? Everything you want is outside of what you already have. In some ways, that there's things you want. Doing
Yeah.
what you do will get you what you've got, which means that if you don't grow, nothing else gets changed, because you're effective. You have the life you have. It's great. But to know if you actually have a posture, I had someone say, have a goal of growth, not a goal of happiness
Yeah.
in this space, is that it has to be beyond. So therefore you have to stretch. You have to actually, I told someone the other day, confidence is remembered, not manufactured. Right? It's an action
That's
you take
awesome. Yeah.
that you're like, oh, I'm remembering this. And so choosing to put yourself in positions where you're like,
Yeah.
let me put myself out there. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, and man, I'm excited about the platform that you're creating beyond baseball, even to be able to speak. Because I think that's the big thing, right? We value people in your setting who have to do things so publicly that it produces a platform for you to share stories
Sure.
of resilience, of asking hard
Yeah.
questions, of asking, hey, where do you anchor your piece? What does your faith look like? What is your journey look like? You even said it. You spend more time mentally prepping for the game than the game. I think there's so many young athletes and young professionals in a very changing world where I'm going, listen, there's going to be a lot of day-to-day challenges. Tomorrow's enough challenge for itself.
Yeah.
Are you doing the work to mentally be ready for that challenge? Are you
Yeah.
anchoring to yourself
Yep.
first? And that's what I
Yeah.
hear as I
I love
listen to
that.
you talk.
Yeah, I think if I could just say one more thing, it's just like, and there's so much more applications than just athletics, but I think for me, something that I've become very apparent of as of recently is the difference between opportunity versus threat. And so I feel like sometimes, for me as an athlete, like I view like the threat of something, or how I used to view, like if I came up in a big situation, I didn't come through, it exposes the fact that I'm not capable, versus thinking about, hey, like I have the opportunity to do something, and so it's like, I think so much we allow that fear of failure to like, kind of put up our defensive of like, oh, I don't want to get exposed. But it's like, you know, I think the alternative is like, hey, can I just be like a little bit curious? And it gets back to what I said earlier. It's like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like this is an opportunity for something good to happen. And it's like, rather than going like the fixated of like, this inevitable threat, it's like, no, like curious about like, I have an opportunity, to do something. Who knows how much I could get out of myself, and I think that's a mindset that I've been trying to adopt and fight for, as of late.
Yeah. And I think that's key, right? Is that instead of reaching for fear, I'm afraid might happen, reaching for curiosity.
Yeah. Yep.
What's staying at the airport, I could literally hear my coach's voice in my own head going, when I lost the ticket and everything, going, the universe is conspiring in my favor. We would say God. Like, what is the invitation? And every challenge, like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
the invitation? There's an invitation
That's
to learn
awesome.
something.
So good. Yep.
It's like, and so you're absolutely right. It's like, how do I step in with curiosity
Yeah.
versus fear?
Yep.
Man, I appreciate you. And if you were watching along at home, I hope I love talking to Kyle about this. And again, your communication makes for a great conversation. So I'm hoping it's not the last time we do this. But
Yeah, we'll do it again.
if you're following along at home and you're kind of like, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about my own life and I haven't given up dreaming yet. Just so you know, in the bio and information below, we have a thing called, I just created this actually, calling it a clarity compass. And it's basically 5 questions that are like, is there a big change on your horizon? Changing your job, ask something different. So there's a thing called the Clarity Compass. It's a downloadable PDF. It's free. Click on that and it's 5 questions free to figure out, should you make a big change? Also, if you're enjoying these, please like, follow, share, all that stuff that you got to do. Every interaction with us, every comment lets other people find us. And we're just trying to give this away, helping people navigate a world that's kind of run off the map. Kyle, you're the man. Thank you so much for being here with me. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It was awesome talking to you. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy.